Okie dokie. Yeah, recording. Cool. So thank you for meeting.
Pleasure. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well. I'm
How do
doing
you
very well.
define well?
How do I define well? Mm, I would define well without any psychosomatic pain or anything. I woke up very well with a good energy, and I feel that life is going in the right direction.
Beautiful. I'm happy for you.
And
Where are you situated?
Tenerife, in Los
Nice.
Silos.
Right. I have been living on Tenerife for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the picture on a volcano.
Exactly. Long time ago already.
Yeah, and where are you now?
I'm in the south of Thailand, Kopangan.
I've been
Other
living there
side.
for a few months. Yeah. Where in Kopangan? In Sritanu?
No, yeah, like up north. What's the area called? Around I don't know if you know, like the Tipi Fitness Center, something. It's
I don't
just up
know,
north.
but you take the main road probably to the somewhere where there is a way to the Bottle Beach or something like this.
Maybe I have not memorized the names of the beaches yet.
There was my favorite spot for meditation. No people, huge rocks, and the ocean.
Yes. That sounds beautiful. I have not seen that place yet, but I will check it out then. What is it called?
Bottle Beach is the beach on the, I think it's north actually. But the way to the not Bottle Beach is a bit before. It's because to the Bottle Beach you can reach by hike or you can reach by boat. I'm not sure if you can go by car. Maybe 4x4, yes, but for sure not normal, and probably not a bike too. But
Okay.
I can link you later the spot.
Sure, that'd be beautiful. So what do we meet for today?
So basically, idea for these meetings is the first meeting I made this way is I seen a post of my friend, which was an interesting topic, and I wanted to make kind of a brainstorm together about this. In your case, we don't know each other yet, or we know now, but we don't know. I don't know what What are you doing actually? I know a little bit. I feel magnetized to you because I see you speak in a nice way. I see that you have nice experience, and I would like to see more about you. Get know more.
Okay. Well, let me share what I do, or say maybe what I like to do is I share with people why I do what I do, because that then explains a little more as to what exactly I'm doing. So I grew up in a very so the first months of my life was very violent, and they have left a lot of trauma in my body and my behavior patterns. So what I would then notice later on in life is there was a lot of suppressed emotions. There was I experienced behavior on a spectrum of bipolar disorder, so depression, depressive tendencies. I would have like a lot of like conflicting thoughts about my purpose and why I'm supposed to be here. So very typical like depressive thoughts and behavior, but I would never know that it's actually, depression. And I was always feeling alone, basically left out. There was a lot of very difficult experiences in my childhood in school. And I would find that it was difficult for me to relate to other people. I felt always secluded, not belonging to anyone or anything. And that has left to very interesting exploits. So I went traveling very early. I did incredible amounts of drugs. I went doing all the modern shamanistic journeys that people do these days, into plant medicines and so forth and so on. All on the search quasi for basically for something that would give me meaning, something that would give me a sense of wholeness. I would never know that I'm actually looking for it. Now in hindsight, I can say that I was looking for it.
Nice.
So in time, what would happen is that there was inevitably an awakening coming, because I was relentless in this diving deeper and deeper into my psychic, into my wounds, into my shadows, and would ultimately find that there was a lot of depth and a lot of pain buried that I did not recognize first. So, bringing all that stuff up ultimately led me to understand that there is very little agency that has been transmitted to me as to how to deal with emotions, relationships, and, how to be of service, because basically in our society, most is just very self-centered, because that's how we grow up. Like everything is about me, and emotionally we never actually grow up. I would say like 99% of people running around are just emotional children. So it's all about them. Everything is about them and how to deal and work with whatever's happening inside of them. And so it has led me to do several, turns on becoming a teacher, guide, coach, etc. First, I was a trainer, fitness trainer, transitioned into functional training, transitioned into mental training, performance training, and ultimately now I'm a movement and mindset coach, I would like to say, but it's just another word for life coaching, just a little more specific. So I found I found a great outlet and a field to practice and work with the body and everything that is stored in it, for the movement. And I found the the emotional intelligence training that I then help now people with, to be the link to the mental agency that many of us in this society so highly value, which is but nothing if there's not the link to the body. And the link between the mind and the body is ultimately the emotion that sits in between, that is kind of the connective tissue, but nobody regards it because it seems to be something that's just a byproduct of our thoughts. So I've been studying this and researching, and now I am creating programs and helping groups, to develop that agency around emotional intelligence, to recognize it in the body and recognize it in the mind, so that ultimately there can be greater alignment within the individual system, but also the collective as a whole. And so that there can be more simplicity in terms of the energetic flow that goes through all of us and then ultimately connects outward.
Okay. Can we dig deeper with this emotion as a link?
Absolutely. This time is yours.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you like to know more about it?
Okay. So let's say that you said that the emotion is suppressed, I would say, yeah. but the name of emotion is about movement, actually. That this is the part that moves us. And I don't know how to catch it, actually, but from maybe I would say how I see that our brain or our psychic is putting traumas into the parts of our body, because our nervous
You're still there, Tom?
system is like a tree, and like the main. Yes, I'm here. I see. I think my connection today is not perfect, the best one, but the voice I have all the time.
Okay, good. Yeah, you have to repeat the
Okay.
last segment so that I am back in the loop.
So our nervous system is mainly like the core is in the core, actually, but the most of our neurons are in the brain, but all the nervous system is neurological connection, and the brain puts some traumas in different parts of the body. And maybe that's my question to you: how do you see this? Because I also do some body work from yoga by on way Thai boxing and massage, then blah blah blah. And I noticed that some traumas are in every person in the same spots. Like for example, I found out that if person is working too much, even not physically, then the blockages in many people are here in these spots. Also, the overused by mothers is here. Like when mother has too much work, many cases there is a like hard spots. But I'm not 100% sure if all traumas go into the same places in every person. And how do you see this part?
It's an interesting subject, because I believe we're not that individual as many may think, at least not on the subconscious level. I personally see the subconscious as, in many regards, something of a system that has that kind of like is a mirror image of the mental processes. And so when I early on learned that I have to be in a hypertensed state, as in a hyper readiness, in order to be able to deal with whatever comes my way, then that may start to show in my physical appearance. And the more this is practiced, say like over a half a year, maybe a decade, the more subconscious this pattern becomes. And so the majority of the work in terms of releasing trauma in the system is becoming aware of these subconscious patterns. No, not so much maybe in intellectualizing the process as to how it is created, but more as to becoming aware in the now. Where does it show? And so when it comes to your original question in terms of how individual do those patterns segment themselves and I would say project themselves into the body, I personally believe that the majority of our patterns, where it sits then in our body, is something we learn. Because perhaps it's in a different culture, there is maybe a different way of dealing with the very same hyper readiness or the very same perceived threat than in another culture. So I personally believe that there is still a particular spot to each of these traumatic patterns that we integrate, but they may differ not so much in the individual, but more in the culture state that they're living in. So when you would see like, say I'm originally from the DACH region, so Central Europe, and you would see like that there is a tendency to like crunch forward, right? In terms of like this hyper working, I have to like, it's the whole body just crunches forward, tendency to bring your shoulders, etc., all to the front, like the pectoralis, like all upper shoulder areas starts to like become hyper tense and like shortens the ligaments are shortening and tightening in, and ultimately there's inflammation created through it. But if you then go, say, for instance, interesting enough, if you go to the United States, they have an entirely different pattern as to how to deal with the hyper readiness. They're having this always kind of like this openness and like trying to push their chest, the upper part of their chest out. Same goes for, say, like perhaps like Antiochia, say, like around Turkey, maybe like like the Balkan areas, etc. They also have a different way of dealing with this hyper readiness. It's more like it's a more forefront. It'll like kind of like bringing this ultimately how they cope with the uncertainty and the insecurity that is built into their system. By then, they're coping with it differently, right? So I don't think that there is like neither like one individual by the other individual, nor is it like one always the same thing. It's more dependent on the culture scape, I would say, to make that a congruent answer, maybe.
Okay. So for this, I have two additional thoughts. And one is like, I was not aware about I was not thinking actually about how they deal with in America or in other countries. Looks like I'm very connected to the European culture. But one thing is this passive aggressive position and inflammation, as you said. But the second thing is that our taller, higher parts of lungs are compressed. And the air is not flowing, and then there are some fungus created and the cancer goes after that. So actually I wonder now if what do you think about breathing techniques?
It's essential. I believe in, I think in any case, in any say like in any work where the realignment of a system is at the objective to re-engage with, say, certain shock therapy, meaning like that you're overloading the system to some degree. And that can be through breathing, that can be through training, that can be through cold, hot exposure. It doesn't matter. But there is a certain reset mechanism necessary. And that can be that you're just submerging your head. And because of your frontal part of your face gets triggered by the submerging of your system, it's just like waking up and like realigning and shaking out a lot of the neurological pathways. But I think in general, when it comes to breathing, it's even more essential than, say, like fancy movements or whatever, simply because our cells need oxygen. So to flood the system with oxygen gives ultimately the necessary impulse for your body to like renegotiate how it is distributing oxygenated blood, and generally like also like the outlet of used up oxygen and air. So I think I do breathing 2 times a day for a long time now. I do like very high intensive training per day. So the breathing allows me to cleanse out, right? And so it is a vital part of healing in any case, I believe. How and who and what, and we can negotiate that. But I think intensive breathing is essential, yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. I could, we can negotiate that, but I would like to add my observations about this. Like one part is the not breathing itself. It's a diaphragm that is making massage for our glands, at least these first chakras or energy centers, however you want to call that. And when they are massaged and they are not stuck, then more oxygen goes by blood inside. So the system starts to be calibrated and works better. And there is one more thing that it came to my mind. I think I never read about this or never heard about this, that the water is an information, and we have a lot of water in our lungs. And by breathing, we are just cleaning the system and putting a new energy and new kind of and fresh space for our memory in a way. And but also before I made a note about hyper readiness. It's interesting for me because it looks like you have a little bit similar experience to me, but it went in a different way. So I wouldn't say I had a pathological or very hard childhood, but that was the times. I'm from Poland, by the way. That was the times we were the parents were beating children, and I'm probably like this I'm probably the more emotional person. And whatever, actually, what I want to say that I observed that my empathy is extrovert, and I understood it a few years ago that my empathy became so extrovert and not introvert because I had to observe what is the mental state of my parents at the moment from a little child. So in a way, it's funny because I observed that I can feel emotions of other people, but it's not so easy to go inside. At least it was like this. And I think this hyper readiness is something similar. What do you think about that?
I believe that the hyper readiness or hypertension comes from a perceived threat that is never actually gone. So you learn that basically it's the eggshell syndrome, if you will. It's you can just use that term because I personally believe it's putting a little better into perspective what hyper readiness really means, because you believe that you're just continuously walking on eggshells around everyone and anything. So what that does to a person is ultimately that they find means to identify when there is an actual threat they have to deal with. Now, in your case, when it comes to defining the difference between intro and extroverted orientation of that eggshell topic, right? I see that when you become in tune as to like making certain how you like that you're always reacting appropriately to whatever is going outside of you, it is just on one end of the spectrum in terms of how to deal with your environment. And then you would say like the introverted person like ends up going into the other end, but they can actually express the very same thing, just the way that they observe either the outside environment or the inside environment is a little bit different. So I personally found that I don't really believe in that there is people inherently being intro or extroverted. I personally see that the idea of intro or extroverted is more or less a coping mechanism that we then just found it convenient to say, like, put into a box of you're an extrovert. Okay, that's just done. So the challenge of an extrovert, hence, is to go inward, whereas the challenge of the introvert is to go out, right, and to start and feel and connect with the outer environment. In my case, I would be declared an extrovert. And as you said yourself, it became very difficult for me to start becoming in tune what's actually going on inside of me. Now, the introvert is not more in tune. It's just making up a different scenario as to play with, right? And so I think the emotional attunement is in both cases essential as to like starting to identify, so what is actually alive in you, as in now, or in this moment, or in this moment. And that can help to balance out this idea of extroverted. Now, when I see, and this is just the way that I have made sense, right? Because you may have found a different reality to be true, but the way that I found it helps me to navigate reality, say, is that when I find it in me to move slow enough to be able to say, like, there is something touching me, and so here is something alive in me now. That's when I start to read or like see more. I become more present. And so that's the essential component to emotional intelligence. And I don't personally think that there's a huge difference between people being extroverted or introverted, but it's more like, how are they approaching their emotional landscape in general? Because both can be very numb. The extroverted perhaps goes out and finds, stuff and like goes out and talks to people, solves other people's problems. Whereas the introverted perhaps goes inwarded and just starts to consume stuff as to not feel, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm not sure about the question, but it's what I wanted to hear. For sure. Okay. I would like to ask you also, because I see that the word depression is coming back in your posts, which I've seen. Can you describe how do you understand depression?
The way that I've found to understand depression is that depress is the word depression comes from the Latin word to press down. And I loved the analogy that has been given to me by one of my mentors, that when you would imagine emotions to be a balloon and the sea to be you, now the emotions there are bubbling up and want to go out. They want to, they just want to leave. So they're created someplace in the depths of the sea, if you will. And so they want to go out. Okay, so now depression would then be you trying to press that down instead of letting it go up. So you would see that balloon and you try to press it down and press it down and press it down. Now that requires a lot of power, right? You need to like put that down, because the balloon is like, you have a feather in both hands and you try to hold it out for 20 minutes and suddenly the feather is super heavy. Now you try to press down a simple balloon of air for a certain amount of time, it becomes very intense. And that's how I view depression. Now there's spectrums such as like the bipolar disorder as an example, which you would say gradually you press down very hard and then you let it go up, right? And then you press it down very hard and you go. It's the same concept. It's still an idea of the like pressing down of whatever needs to go up. And that's the way I view, or helps me to also explain and make visual, so to say, for people as to what depression does also, like what it costs me ultimately.
That speaks to me a lot. And actually, like, my story with depression is that I didn't know that I have it. I didn't understand. Nobody told me that. And I understood after years, actually, when I was actually in Thailand. I was on a beautiful beach. Like, everything is so nice around me and my thoughts are same. And they even started to talk to me in English. And actually how how I deal with this, how I made that change was that from at this moment I was still living in Warsaw. So I just took myself and put myself to India, to ashram, to yoga center. And that's the place where things started to change like very fast. It was like 1 month transformation, mind and body. It was traditional tantra yoga, which means it's meditative type of yoga. So you are doing exercise almost half sleeping. So we are a lot of in your subconscious mind. So a lot of neurological parts are, the bad one are dissolving and you're creating the calm one. It's very nice stuff. So this metaphor about the balloon that is suppressed is very nice, is depressed. Because many people say, I hear it from people with depression, that they need to, for example, I heard this metaphor that I need to clean the snow. It's like I have a lot of snow and I need to clean it and then I have a peace. So it means that the person is taking a lot of time to compress these emotions, to feel that it's normal, instead of putting them away. And I love this because this is my point of view. Like I didn't clean the snow all the time. I just put myself to the place with a movement and with other conditions. But for the people like I've been, that didn't know how the depression looks like, or if they are in the depression, what would you say to that kind of people that probably they feel that there's something wrong with them at the moment, I mean, but they don't understand it? What would you say to them? Or what?
So first of all, I like to distance myself from the idea that something is wrong. The way that I see it, it's actually very right. It's a very intelligent coping mechanism. However, unfinished, it is very intelligent because you survived. Right? So your system has actually done the best it can. So there's nothing, the way that I see it, and I don't want to correct you. It's more just to say the way that I see it by now.
But I agree.
So there's nothing inherently wrong. On the contrary, I'm very grateful for these patterns. However, now I recognize they're actually sabotaging because they're unfinished. They're the product of a child, of a very young at that. So in order to help someone to understand or come to the conclusion that they're running on an unfinished program, I'd like to ask them how they deal with a trigger, a negative one at that. How do they deal with conflict? The way that I see for us to identify whether or not it's a healthy and fully developed program we're using or an unfinished one that is sabotaging us comes to the forefront when we are looking at the conflict culture we are living, we are expressing. And that shows itself in communication, relationship building, how much we are actually authentic in our expression, etc. So that's when I ask somebody simply, how do you deal with a conflict? Is there an example of a conflict that you have? Right? If the person cannot pinpoint at that very moment as to, that's how I actually do. Okay, that doesn't work. So I simply ask, and we can do this with you. How do you deal with a conflict? Do you have a memory of a conflict that you experienced recently, perhaps?
That's a very cool explanation. Very short one, very cool one. Okay, from the other point of view, what is life about?
Being. I don't see any other purpose to it. You just are. And then you make up meaning and make up sense and ideas. But there's nothing to life more than just business. And that's perhaps the most frustrating and delusional place to come to, especially for people who experience depression, because they're so much yearning for a direction or an orientation that makes sense to them. because everything is devoid of color, so to say. Like it's just all gray. So there's no purpose. And for me, it was actually mushrooms that have taught me that. I've taken a huge portion of mushrooms, and I came to the conclusion that there is literally no point in being. There's just are. That's it. Everything else, everything that I tried to, especially for depressive people, and that's why I then later could look back and say, like, now it all makes sense. Especially for depressive people, they're yearning so much for this direction and purpose and something that gives them somehow a feeling of being held, right? Such as like an orientation. Once they come to the conclusion, that's usually when they're at the corner, right? Basically at the crossroads, saying like, okay, so if there's no purpose, I may as well just end it. And that's where I've been standing and saying like, okay, so there's no purpose. What the fuck am I doing then? There's literally no point for me being here. I may as well just stop being then. And so I had to find other means for me to justify my existence. And the only say like satisfactory justification was to be of service, because everything else is just, it doesn't lead anywhere. Why would I just try to create this image and this, symbolic personality that ultimately then receives so much praise or whatever? It doesn't last. It doesn't go anywhere. So there's no purpose to that. However, anything that I do in service or in creation for others would actually have a ripple effect. And so I found at least a little bit of a straw that I could hold on. Later, I would also let go of that idea, but at least it was ultimately the one thing that I could say at that very moment in my life, say, okay, so I don't want to throw away that gift that has been handed over to me, because there have been a lot of people, a lot of forces involved as to me arriving at that very moment in my life. There's a lot of resources being consumed for me to be here. I don't want to throw that away. But what I can do is literally give back all that I have consumed and trying to start and create something that then creates a ripple effect in other people's lives, hopefully for the better. And I started to dig, because I understood that the only thing that I can really pass on is embodied knowledge. Nothing else will last. I can build a house and it's going to be consumed back by nature. But what I can do is start to embody and understand this thing. How have I come and arrived at this very place? And so I came to the conclusion there is actually inherently faulted programs that are running. And I also would start to see, hey, other people are also running on faulty programs, like an unfinished business, if you will. So, okay, what I can do is, because I would say, rather good at digging, right? At drilling down on things, I started to dig into these things and try to, okay, what it's down here. It's not a very pleasant journey, right? But you notice the more you're going down there and digging that stuff up, okay, so now what is this trash? So you started to clean that and they find, okay, now this is what I'm running on. Oof, I don't want to use that. And because you recognize that everything is conditioned, you're starting to kind of like mold that process that you're in. And you can only do that from a place of slowness. And that was potentially the most difficult process for me to unravel, because I was always like on the third lane of speed, like super fast, 3 burnouts. So that's ultimately saying a lot. So yeah, trailed off a little bit, but that's kind of like how I perceived the purpose of living or life as such.
Okay. And what would be what is the perfect life? Like the most pleasurable?
I think that's the better question that we should be asking, because the perfect one does not exist. It's like the famous philosophical question of Japan. Which cherry blossom is the best, the perfect one? There is none. They're all perfect how they are, because the perfect doesn't exist. It's just a fact, like it's something that we humans have created to entertain ourselves. So, but the most pleasurable life that I could be thinking of would be a life of creating something that truly helps other people transform their unfinished business. Because it satisfies me a lot. It gives me the sense of satisfaction and significance that I feel, okay, I've actually been helping at least one or maybe two or maybe 10 or maybe 20 people to get that one step further in realigning themselves. And then perhaps the way that I do that would allow me to feel more aligned and more in flow with everything that goes on.
Heal the others and you're gonna be healed. Yeah.
Or heal yourself and you heal others.
Cooperation anyway.
Very much, yes.
Okay. So, okay. I want to come back a bit to this emotion, because in hypnotherapy, we were writing before about hypnotherapy. I'm studying this. I'm studying this now and working with that already. And the interesting point of view in hypnotherapy, and I think very accurate, is that to work on this, as you describe, for example, trash that we have inside that is driving us. That this trash, maybe let's talk about this different way, but I like it actually. We can call it trash. This, like, our trauma, our childhood belief is the part that connects the emotion, connects the belief, and connects the physical part. But physical part, it can be a pain that you have, and you don't understand that you have it for many years, that this is just a psychosomatic reaction. But it can be also to be in a rush all the time. Maybe not all the time, but if something triggers you, then you are in a rush, and you shouldn't be so much in a rush. So these three parts are connected. The physical, emotional, and psychological part. And again, can you tell something about this? Does it connect with you?
Very much so. Well, I found an interesting phenomenon I would call the four body principles. So the four bodies idea, you can check it out. I thought I've made it up personally. I thought, like, okay, so I'm the first person to think it that way. And then I checked it out and I found actually there's other people. And it's so beautiful, right? We come up with these illuminating thoughts. It's like, okay, now I'm the first, but then we're not. So the idea how it is basically because I always found the way that we are intellectualizing our system is too often too complicated. It's just always coming from the mind. Okay, so the mind is overworking. So what is the body doing in the meantime? Well, the body is trying to support the mind or everything above it to do its work, right? So I found, okay, so I have the body as the space holder, male, masculine, and of its function. It holds space. It gives a frame. It supports the whole thing. Okay, then we have the intellectual body, right? The mind. What does the mind do? It's actually usually just in the past and in the future because it cannot be now. Really, it's just always trying to come to the now, but kind of fails. So what it does is like gives a lot of meaning, structure again as such, making sense a lot, problem solving perhaps. So it's also framing. And so there's also masculine. So where the hell is where's the feminine? So I was thinking, so like there needs to like I was looking into it, and because I had this particular experience with my partner because we're living in an open relationship, and ultimately that happened. And so that hurt me a lot, right? And I wanted it because I had an idea of it. So, and ultimately that hurt a lot, and a lot of stuff came up. So now I went down there, and instead of trying to suppress it as I usually done, I noticed, whoa, what is all that stuff coming from? I didn't even know that it was down there. And because of that, huge experience, I noticed, whoa, there's a lot of things going on inside of me that I'm not even aware of. So I noticed, hey, wait, there's an entire body in between the mind and the body, as in the physical body. And that perhaps, because of its expansiveness and its chaotic, perhaps like tumultuous nature, but also giving things color, infusing things with a felt idea that's like, wow, this is nice, or this is not. So there's a lot going on suddenly. So I noticed, well, that's very feminine. Okay, so now feminine, we found at least one body that is feminine in between. And so as the feminine by nature is a very connective idea, I noticed that because before doing trauma work, I would always notice that your thoughts are creating your emotions, creating your impact in your physical being. Okay, very fundamental ideas. And I would observe that. However, the emotion was never something to be regarded. It's just something that's there. Okay, but now suddenly I recognized that the emotions are actually the connective tissue between the mind and the body. Much like the fascia in the physical body are represented by the emotions, and that's where the emotions are stored. So you would see very tense and tight fascia. They're making things very difficult to be transmitted, as fascia is actually the element in the physical body that transmits signals from the brain to the muscle. When suddenly you have a lot more meaning, and my mind goes nuts. It's like, wow, okay, interesting. So I went down there and dissected and analyzed and tried to feel, most of all, because I recognized I had a very low intelligence of this particular body. I was intellectual. I can make meaning all the time. That's not a problem. I'm good at this. I can move. I've been training for 2 decades. That's not a problem either. But emotionally, my agency was I had none. So I was like, okay, wait, I'm not satisfied with this. I want to understand what's actually, and it's not a very pleasant journey, especially when you're used to just, putting it away and you don't even know that you're putting it away. So dragging that shit out and trying to start to build agency and intelligence as such has been a fascination, but also somewhat a very tedious process, because it's not something that you can intellectualize and program, because it's the emotions that are coming up randomly. And so that's very frustrating sometimes when you notice in the middle of a bus ride, 50 hours or whatever, and your partner sits next to you and starts to have her downward spiral and triggers the shit out of you, and you become angry, and now okay, what do I do with this anger now? So, and then ultimately I knew, okay, there's a spiritual realm that many have access to, not knowing that they do. So in the spiritual realm, being very expansive and yet again connective, must also be emotional, female by nature. And then I would notice, okay, so we have the deepest layer of the subconscious, which would be your body, the physical thing that tags you into this material element, into this material world. Then you have the connective tissue, very fluid, very chaotic, giving you an access point from the conscious self to the subconscious, still unconscious, but it's there. It's the emotions. Then you have the intellectual body, who is the conscious mind, who can perceive and connect dots intentionally. And then you would have, when these 3 things are in alignment, you would suddenly notice that there is a movement starting to happen. Only if they're equally gravitating, equally in harmony, working, suddenly there's a movement inside of them spiraling up. And it's easier to access whatever is coming down, because the mind is not so overly present, trying to establish all omni-control, basically. And the emotions are calm because they can just flow without any hindrances, and they can also express naturally. And the body is relaxed and calm as well, because there's no need for hypertense, exasperations, etc. So naturally would feel more intuitive. There we go with the grand idea of being in flow. Now, what is flow really? It's just a beautiful alignment between all four bodies. So to put into perspective is basically for me to understand, so why do children learn so much? Why do children know intuitively so much? It's not because it's just in their genes. It's literally because they're naturally, usually, very aligned. And alignment would then be for them to just simply be in harmony with their emotions. I'm angry, okay, I'm going to express that anger. I'm happy, I'm going to express that happiness. I'm tired now. My body says sleep, okay, I'm going to go sleep. And so when I would then look at children, I would see that the intellectual body is very little present. There's a problem to be solved. I'm going to go solve it. And that's it. And that's as much space as the intellectual body is supposed to have. Now, looking at my own self, I would then create little diagrams as to how developed and how present are these bodies. And I would see that I have a huge head in relation to a very small heart. And then, moderate body, and my intellectual self is still someplace there, just to put that a little bit into a picture.
Yeah, that's funny description. Okay, we are talking almost an hour already, 50 minutes. And to not make it too long, I would ask you, maybe the last, maybe not. I think both of us has some more time if we will go with a flow of something. But my question is now about, it also came before a bit, maybe it's the same story still, but I want to ask you about celebration mode, which we can be in, and fight or run mode, which most of the people are in. What would you say about the world from this perspective?
I think fight or flight, as in freeze and fawn, these responses should be very moderately present. If I notice and come to terms that there is me trying to fix all the time, which is me for most of my life, just trying to fix things, or early in my life, I was mainly fighting things. Then perhaps I was freezing. So if I notice that this is my predominant state of affairs, I want to start to understand, how does that serve me? Why am I doing this? There's a very intelligent reason for my system to do that. So why am I doing this? And once I find out, I can start to investigate for the mere fact to become more present with it, not to intellectualize it. And then in terms of celebration mode, I personally believe it can help, certainly, to motivate, to keep you on the positive end of the spectrum, because it's more pleasurable to be there. But what does it really do? If you're trying to intentionally generate a certain state, it's for you to not experience another state. So if you feel like you're tired in the morning, but you have this package of work in front of you, it's better to be in a celebration mode than in a kind of low motivation mode, if you will. So it becomes a little bit of a pattern as to me trying to fix my situation, right? I'm trying to cope with it, hence I'm going into celebration mode. And I personally use it sometimes when I recognize that I am running a pattern again of not being appreciative. What I like to do is I kickstart my appreciation with celebration, but only for the mere fact to come back to appreciation. So I notice what an incredible time for me to be alive, to have such a beautiful conversation with another human being. And so I come into this celebration for just a moment, but with the intent of appreciation. So it helps me to just jump up, and then I kind of re-engage with appreciating that I have desk, that there's internet, that there's electricity, a water bottle, etc., tools. And I'm just incredibly grateful for that. And usually I access or utilize some form of positive emotion, maybe perhaps excitement related, to get me back to that spot, but with the clear intent that it's all about appreciation in the first place. And simply because sometimes being like on the lower end, just because you're tired and maybe you've received bad news of whatever sort, it is difficult to just, okay, I'm going to appreciate again. You just find a reason to celebrate because there's plenty. And so once you're up and buoyant again, you can start to appreciate whatever's up there. And it's just, helps, if I would say, but still it's a coping mechanism.
It makes a lot of sense from the point of view of dopamine, because dopamine is giving us the power to move. Yeah. But if we overuse it, so over celebrate it in this meaning, then we don't have it enough.
There's bound to be a low. So if I'm not aware of like that, my system actually needs that reset moment of just sleeping and not doing anything, or just consuming whatever resources I need to go back functioning. If I don't let it do that and capitalize on my intellectual understanding that I just need to celebrate something and back up again, it's just, you're just, I don't know the word now, but it's kind of like as if you're just stealing. And at some point, there's nothing to steal. So you have to pay the price ultimately. And that is usually nice. If it would be nice if it's just sleep. But especially people with a tendency of depression, they tend to, if the low is too impactful for them, revert back to old patterns and start to depress again. It's like, no, I'm just going to numb themselves through, I don't know, whatever.
Okay. I like this a lot. Okay. Do you have something you would like to share more?
I would actually want to take that moment and appreciate your work, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. And same the other side. I really feel connection with what you do. I didn't do a lot of research about you, but I see that you're doing very good work. I see in the way you're moving your body, because I'm also connected. Now I'm maybe not moving enough, but I see how do you do this work, and I see how you speak. But actually, I have one more question. Are you focused more on a group of people? Because I seen in one of your posts you were talking more to women than to men. Are you focused on any specific groups?
It's an interesting question, because naturally, no. Naturally, it's just whoever is sitting in front of me. Now, an interesting thing happens when men see women getting the light. They're going to run. If you ask men to step into the light, no. But since women are much, much more courageous in that regard, to test out and go someplace and actually look and feeling and stuff, right? It's much easier to actually allow men to step up their game when they feel they're actually not looked at so closely. So what are they doing there? So yes, by default right now, we're looking into helping specifically women in their 30s. But that's just a spectrum of humans that I know are very connected to men as well, and to say like the society at large. So women in their 30s are usually already awakened to some degree. There's a lot happening, at least, and they're connected, you see. And so I believe to talk to women in their 30s allows for the vicinity to also listen, if that makes any sense. But really, like at the bottom of things, if anybody is interested in healing and realigning and building that emotional muscle that many of us are so incapable of actually utilizing, especially in conjunction with a healthy communication. I'm happy to just, provide that. And it goes hand in hand with movement, because the best way to identify someone's emotional intelligence is literally to see how they move.
Okay. This is very, very nice, because it shows that your idea, as I understand it, your goal is not work on the persons. Your work is about creating better space for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I personally believe the more I can heal myself, the more I'm able to heal others. So it doesn't start with me wanting to create a program. It starts with me creating the space for myself to heal, so that I can then start and help others do the same work if they want, if they're curious enough.
Yeah, amazing. I love this way. Okay. And for the people who would like to know more about you, what is the best way to find you? On what media you are more?
Okay. I mean, I want to be very frank. I don't like social media too much. I love person-to-person contact in the material world. But I see that social media is a very connective element again.
Yeah.
So I am established profiles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok even, and I think I'm also on YouTube. It is by now more and less moderated by me. I do still write with people, but doing like postings, etc. This is all stuff that I have beautiful humans that help me with. But yeah, I think you can basically just connect with me looking for my name, Renato Montañés, or just Montanes, letter by letter, and you will find me on any of these prominent platforms. I'm also like on Telegram. I have many of the group work that I do is happening on Telegram. I really appreciate that platform, must say. And yeah, you can go on my website, of course, renato.montanes.com, or just ask the universe to throw something at you that has my name on it. Yes.
Yeah, it's cool. Oh, I had one more question just meanwhile, but it it went away.
What are you most curious about?
Yeah, it was a very simple question, actually. Where are you from, and how old are you, if I can ask?
Absolutely, please. So I grew up in Switzerland, and I am like 36 right now, turning 37 in about 2 months, something. So yeah, that's where I'm from, how old I am. I haven't been living in Switzerland for a very long time, traveling. So we are traveling around for 2.5 years now, and I don't intend to go back there anytime soon, just because I found homes elsewhere.
Okay, and so do you work mostly online, or you work mostly in face? I mean, in face, like in physical way, or you do both?
So I used to be offline 100%, and then COVID came, and I transitioned everything online. So now I'm mainly online. However, I do still do workshops and retreats and seminars of sorts. And I do still, some of my clients actually travel with me. So I'm traveling and they just, hop along. So some of my clients are local. And I personally, I always enjoy a good conversation over a cup of tea, just to have like a good chat. And I still very much enjoy to to intellectualize things. It's just something that gives me pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when there is like a familiar soul that we can do that together, or even a group. I really enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is the fastest way we can share actually by oral way, like
Mm,
to learn from empathy or from movement. It takes more time, or it takes more time to mix our pheromones,
mm,
like because you also do the dancing therapy, something like that.
mm.
I think I seen something like contact improvisation on your video.
Yes, exactly. So it's like
Yeah.
I've just recently started to establish a Zoom dance concept where it's just a silent party all over the globe,
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of people dancing. Because I was always thinking, like, how can I help people and myself to become more in tune with their bodies? Well, there's a
Mm-hmm.
very natural and a very, very old way to do that by rhythm and movement,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been doing that as a species for eons. So why complicate things? Why create yet another wheel, when
Mm-hmm.
it's just so
Mm-hmm.
simple just to unite in dance and move. And yes, we can
Mm-hmm.
infuse that with perhaps quality cues, um, you know, whatever, and particular movements and whatever. But at the base at the core of things, we all resonate a lot with rhythms, and we resonate a lot with that natural movement that comes from those rhythms and how we feel with those rhythms. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's cool. But have I heard well? Quiet dance?
So it's a silent party. Basically, a
Silent.
silent disco means that you just have your headphones on.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
not
This way.
blasting it all over the place. And there's
Mm-hmm.
like these, I don't know if you've ever been to one. There's like silent, ecstatic dances at the beach. Everybody just wears their headphones listening to the same tunes. And
Mm-hmm.
outsiders would hear nothing about like a part of the waves, perhaps. So it's beautiful
Mm-hmm.
to see people just move and they're
Yeah.
united in their own track, but not disturbing anyone in terms of like, noise pollution, whatever. And now you
Mm-hmm.
put that online and people are sitting in a Zoom call, and perhaps one is in Australia, or someone is in Thailand, someone is in Europe, and whatever. They're all doing the very same thing now, just not
Mm-hmm.
in person because maybe they just are not there, and doing the very same thing, dancing with their headphones or with their speakers on, whatever. So that's
Mm-hmm.
just it's just a beautiful idea, and it's how would you say, like, it's a flux of my mind. I just got this channel, this download at some point. I just felt like, why not do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just a fun thing to do.
Okay. And looks like you're connected to this spiritual path,
Mm,
but also grounded.
mm,
And so I think we have this connection too, because I like to search somewhere there. I like to channel. I mean, these things are coming by itself. It's
mm,
not like I'm turning on it, but things are coming. But I also like to give a scientific way of understanding to things.
mm.
And so maybe last question. How do you find the balance between spirituality and science?
The way that I see science is the mind needing security. The way I see it, we don't need science. You can have it. It's a fun
Mm-hmm.
tool, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessary. And I certainly feel that it helps me to feel secure and safe and stable.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all my mind needs.
Mm-hmm.
So science, the way that I see it, is still a remnants of a a very scared masculine energy trying to understand and frame everything so that it can feel more safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I personally, the way that I feel more and more is spirituality allowing me to feel so much more safe. But because
Mm-hmm.
it needs that attunement with the feminine in me. And the more I allow the feminine and also the softness and that chaotic, perhaps sometimes random and unpredictable way of doing things, the more my masculine side, the intellect and etc., can relax. And so what I then found is the easiest way to just feel safe is to simply ask a question. It's like I feel sometimes I just send up a telegram like, hey, how can I do that? What do I need to do in order to get that thing here solved? And I get an answer. And sometimes the answer is super random and I have zero clue how to incorporate it, but just go with that. And suddenly I start to notice that I meet the right people now because I have asked a different question, the question that is actually helping me to go a different way, where before I've been looking at it the wrong way. So I personally, I feel it all has it's like trying to say like that the mind is unnecessary. The mind is necessary. It's there, but it's a little overvaluated, We're making it much, much bigger and much, much more important. And it's just, for me, the way I see me individually in relation to the collective. It's like looking at one cell and a huge amount of cells that make up an entire body. Now, if you remember, I've been saying that I see from a picturesque image, I see my brain, my mind is super blown up. It's huge because I make so much sense all the time. But then I see that projected onto our society and I see the very same picture. If I look at humanity as one body, the masculine, say like the mental aspect, the science and like all that structure that we build is the same thing. It's just the mind going haywire because it's so afraid. And the way I see it is also blocking a little bit the channels that could go up and down because it's so humongous,
So you see it as a control part.
It's the way I see it. And also, like by nature, the mind goes back and forth in time. It does not reside in the now. That's the job of the emotion. The emotion is very present. It's here. It's just, right? Especially the body is then even. So what you would see when you look at the mind, it accesses either past experiences to predict any form of future. It has very high difficulties to reside in the now. So if that is the truth, what does it do? It just provides safety, period. And if that is the job of the mind, look at what the mind has accomplished so far. It has created insane amount of structures. What for? Well, we've been certainly very, very afraid in the past, say like a couple of millennia ago. We've learned that nature is actually not just always our friend. And so what do we need to do? We need to build cities, Jesus. We need to be very certain that there's structures in place that, the animals and everything, that food is provided, that, that we can be certain and stable and secure. And so everything started to shift. Everything started to tip over and the masculine energy went completely nuts. But all because it couldn't make certain simple that everything is safe. And so you just have, if you look at it from a child's perspective, you have a little child, a male child, is just super afraid. Fuck, I need to make sense. I need to build structures and stabilize everything, That's the way I see the masculine energy. It's not so much like, at least the way I see it, and I could be wrong, but the way I see it is not this macho personality that people identify as a toxic masculine. All children, they're all just super afraid. The only thing that they can do is try to use whatever tools they see and there's given to them. And our society has been very, very good at providing intellectual means. Even if you go into traditional Chinese medicine, there's very little reference to emotions. And I've been studying that stuff. They know a lot about fascia, but they've never actually never actually linked the emotional aspect to the fascia. So they know a lot about energies. But dare you ever try to talk to a traditional Chinese medicine master about emotions? It's just a byproduct. And so you would see it
Try to
all over the
disconnect.
place. Exactly. It's just it does never actually have the space it needs, which is why they all were flawed to some degree. They do a great job at providing certainty, safety, stability, but the real color of things, it's just very difficult to be found.
Mm-hmm.
And trust has very little to say in that whole game.
Okay.
It's me ranting.
I would like to add one thing. That's for me the scientific way of looking. It doesn't need to be true even always. I mean, not always, but our part of rational mind is the part that needs to believe. And when you believe, you can open more for creation, at least on the level when you're still in the box. But I think most of us are at least a bit in a box. So just to add to this, because it was very interesting, the way you understand, and you for me actually, that the science is like a masculine energy. And I enjoy to hear that. Yeah. And yeah, I'm a bit chaotic today, but maybe it's supposed to be like this today just. So in this chaotic Thomas, I would like to thank you a lot for this conversation, for this talk. And what to say, I hope we're gonna meet someday somewhere on our path. Would be a pleasure. Or maybe we're gonna meet one more time someday here online.
In any case, it's a pleasure to be connected to you, Tom. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot, and have a beautiful day. Or evening, actually, because you are in Thailand. It's like afternoon.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's afternoon. But I'm very grateful that the day also has an end.
Yeah.
Have a beautiful rest of your Monday, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, and enjoy. That's my favorite place in the world where you are now. So
I personally came to appreciate it a lot. Yes. See you, Tom.
Yeah. Ciao.
Bye-bye.